to call to order the regular meeting of the West Valley City Council. Let the roll call show that all members of the council are here today, save Councilmember Karen Lang, who has asked to be excused this evening. Tonight it's my turn for the opening ceremony, and so we will drop the screens for a brief message. Other than the movement there in the back. Now, as you know, it's election day today, and I'm sure everyone in this room has voted already, or if not, you still have an hour and a half. In fact, apparently voteutah.gov has crashed, and we have a line of people out here at the treasurer's office asking where their polling place is, and
I was down this morning.
And they're on the phone. Yeah, they're on the phone to the clerk's office helping people find out where to vote, which is great. Well, even though most of you have voted, I've invited a former president of the United States. Since today is November 6th, this is pretty uncanny. He actually reminds us to vote on November 6th. But what he says about voting, I think, is timeless and certainly is worth some pause and listening to today. So, Jake?
In these tense and anxious weeks, I know that every American citizen wants to know what he can do for his country. Not everyone can serve in our armed forces or serve our government, but there is one thing you can do. There is one way you can indicate your devotion to freedom. There is one way in which we can show how strongly we believe in our democracy. Next Tuesday, November 6th, is Election Day. I hope every American will turn out and vote. Every American, every member of his family. And show the world how strongly we believe in freedom, how strongly we believe in our country, how strongly we believe in democracy.
We appreciate those words from President Kennedy, as timeless today as they were in 1962. Number 5 tonight is the approval of our minutes, and we have the minutes of October 16th and 23rd for your consideration, Council.
Mayor, I move for approval of the minutes of October 16th and October 23rd, 2012.
Second.
Thank you both. There's a motion and a second there. Any discussion of the minutes? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
The minutes pass unanimously. We have several awards and presentations tonight. I suspect that's what brings most of you here. We're thrilled to have you. The first one is our Employee of the Month Award, Mary Lindsay from the Fire Department. And we've asked a special council member to make that on our behalf tonight.
Oh, okay.
I forgot who had it too, so I
All right. Well, here we would like to take this opportunity to nominate Mary Lindsay as Employee of the Month for October 2012. Mary's continuing dedication to all the firefighters of the West Valley City Fire Department and the citizens of this city is displayed daily through her action. She goes above and beyond the call of duty in both assigned and unassigned tasks. Mary represents our city and the fire department in a positive light, daily through her work with local businesses, the elderly, and the youth in the community. She has been responsible for several programs that directly affect the fire crew in the field. Mary has worked to make the citizens safer by evaluating and creating performance improvement plans for the schools, nursing homes, and businesses through health fairs, fire drills, extinguishers, CPR, and first aid classes. She has spent several hours of her own time on her way home from work to make sure the crews have all the supplies they need. She follows through with everything she says she will, even when she needs to rearrange her own time to do so. But these are only a few reasons why Mary is a great candidate for this award. Last month, we had a firefighter of 25 years retired because of some health issues that surfaced very suddenly. Because of this and some other family problems, this firefighter and his wife are experiencing financially. They are struggling to get by and have really fallen on hard times. Mary spent countless hours collecting donation, food, money, and anything else she could to help raise money to give to her brother firefighter. As one small example, she baked 500 cookies in her kitchen to help raise money. She went way above and beyond to make this happen, and in the end, she was the main reason that $15,000 were raised and donated. Mary has demonstrated everything that is good about a person, and we believe she is a great example to all of us for her efforts on and off the job. Mary has great compassion for everyone she meets and works with. Well, thank you very much.
Mary, could you come shake our hands, please? And Mary, before you sit back down, and you want to come to the microphone, is there anything, do you want to acknowledge anyone that's here? It looks like you have a few co-workers, maybe even some family
My
here.
brothers. My brothers, thank you guys, and my family. Thank you guys for everything you guys do. I couldn't do it without both of my families. Thank you.
Well, we hear one of these each month since it is Employee of the Month. I gotta tell you, that was a pretty phenomenal write-up and just all around what you've done to help the community and to help your brother firefighters and to help us as a city is really above and beyond. So thank you so much, and your family and your work family are all very proud of you and know that we as elected officials sincerely appreciate you too. So if you agree with me, let's give her a warm round of applause. And because we like Mary so well and the firefighters and her family, we won't be offended if they need to slip out early to go celebrate or watch election results or whatever it is they want to do. So thank you again for joining us. We are sure proud to have great employees like Mary Lindsay here at West Valley City. We also have a quarterly division award that we do 4 times a year by definition, and that is handled tonight by Councilmember Steve Bueller. So Councilman.
Thank you, Mayor. This nomination was made by Battalion Chief Chris Beichner, and it is the Fleet Division of the Public Works. I would like to nominate the Fleet Division for all of their hard work on fire apparatus. This division is often not noticed by the community, nor is the division visibly out in the community like other departments. However, they are a main component of many departmental operations. We frequently have our fire engines, trucks, and ambulances going in for service and repair, and they are sent back to us as soon as possible so we can maintain providing an emergency service. There have been several times that these men have come out to us on a scene or wherever we have broken down and crawl under our trucks on hot asphalt or freezing ice and try to get us back up and running. Their thorough service and inspections have caught potential problems early, which reduce the possibility of mechanical failure and help prevent accidents or greater financial loss to the city. These men are always covered in grease, dirt, and grime due to their hard work. The bays of the shops are never empty, and downtime for these men just doesn't happen. Not only do they get the fire apparatus back out on the streets, they are also getting all of the other vehicles, mowers, plowers, and trucks back on the street in order for those in the community to provide the service they are hired to do. This division is a vital asset and is truly a backbone to maintaining public service. Citizens thank us, the firefighters, all the time, but I would like to thank them and make sure they know that they are just as important as the guys on the street. So we have the Outstanding Division Award for the Fleet Division. I'd like you to come forward and accept this and let us shake your hands.
done shaking hands, if you can pull back, we'll do a group photo for our records. Fleet Division, you want to come back for just a group photo now that the handshaking is done?
A little closer here, buddy.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Bueller, for making that presentation on our behalf. And we do appreciate that great Fleet Division. And it was that field trip we did last year through your facilities that made me even have a deeper appreciation for what you do and so many different departments in the city that you gentlemen impact. So thank you again so much. And because we like you so well, we'll even let you leave early. So thank you. From time to time when we have very special purposes, we have what's called the Essential Piece Award, because there are just some pieces of our community that are so essential, like that key piece in a puzzle that really helps make West Valley City a great place. And we have Councilmember Corey Rushton, who will be making a special Essential Piece Award on our behalf tonight.
Yeah, this is an Essential Piece Award that may be a little bit overdue, as Shelley School of Dance has been in our city since 1966, I believe. And it's kind of been right under our noses, but last year, as I shared with some of the council members, I attended one of their performances, and it really became apparent how much of an essential piece they were, because just people from all different corners of the community, people that serve on different city boards, Neighborhood Watch, old council members. I mean, it was just a who's who of West Valley that attended this. It was like a red carpet night in West Valley, and it became very apparent that Shelley School of Dance is a very essential piece to our community. And there are many things in this community that come and go, and some leave a lasting impression. And while others are forgotten as quickly as they arrived, in 1966, Shelley School of Dance arrived in West Valley City, and it was in the basement of a home that had 12 students, and the concerts were held in the backyards, and the garage was used for the dressing room. And as Shelley School of Dance grew in the community, the studio moved in 1971 from the basement to its current location, and concerts have been held at Rockbank Junior High, Kennedy Junior High, and presently at Hunter High School. And over these years, the studio has grown from 12 students to over 250 students. And this has taught and left an impression on thousands of beautiful young dancers in these past 46 years. Shelley School of Dance has proudly observed their dancers serve in active leadership roles in local junior high, high school, university dance, drill, and cheerleading programs. Shelley has taught more than 3 generations of families and has provided West Valley City with more than a dancing school, but a studio where children are taught creatively. They're taught some self-confidence, and they're also taught a comfort in knowing high standards will always be upheld. Shelley has 9 teachers and has had 14 teachers over the years, which shows the loyalty of Shelley's teaching staff. And Shelley School of Dance has always been proud of the program and the opportunity they have had to serve the people of West Valley for the past 46 years. What a joy and a blessing this studio has been to Shelley and all of her teaching staff, as well as all the happy dancers gracing the floor of the studio each year. So on behalf of West Valley City, the second largest city, please accept this City Council small token of appreciation for the many years of loving service to the city. Shelley School of Dance, you are an essential piece.
That's awesome. So
And Shelley, if you the microphone's right here if there's anything you'd like to say about the last 46 years, and we'd also like you to introduce the people that have come with you tonight to celebrate this occasion. So go ahead and take a few minutes there.
This is really an honor and such a surprise. I am very proud of my heritage and legacy to this area. My great-great-grandfather, who also was a Rushton homestead of this area, has always meant the world to me. I grew up here, I loved it here, and I really appreciate being able to work here and be part of this great city. I'm very grateful to Corey for presenting this opportunity to me. My studio will cheer when I bring this award home. We're now teaching my dance students grandchildren, so we kind of have been around a long time. I am very appreciative to the council and to Mayor Winder. I'm very appreciative to my parents who believed in my dream and made it possible to expand to the point where we are right now. I'm grateful for dance teachers who are great mentors, who are exemplary women, who are very talented, and for the dance education that they provided for the wonderful young children and teenagers of West Valley City. My family that is here, I have a daughter-in-law, Shannon Pearson, who actually teaches at the studio and was a former student of mine. And my mother, beautiful lady in the pink, this is my mother who helped push the furniture back in the basement so that I could do my thing. And this is a friend of mine, Jim Levinger, who has come to be with me. My family is scattered around. I have a daughter in London and a son in Texas and his family, and a daughter in New York and her family. So this is what I have to bring with me. But once again, thanks so much. This just is a wonderful night for me. Appreciate it.
Thank you again, Shelley, and we appreciate Councilor Rushton bringing this idea to our attention, which was wholeheartedly and unanimously welcomed by the council, and we're honored to honor you tonight. Steve?
Just one comment, just living up the street from the studio, it's always fun to drive down the street there when they're doing pictures. And all of the cars parked along the street, and the little girls with their colorful costumes skipping down the road to go in and have their pictures taken, and it's a wonderful asset to the community, and all the girls in the neighborhood go there.
Thank you again, because we like you so much. We won't be offended if you want to slip out, but being a public meeting, you're always welcome to stay as well. So thank you. Our next item is we have a proclamation declaring November as Alternative Fuel Vehicle Awareness Month in West Valley City, and it's my turn to read one. So this proclamation begins as follows. Whereas the state of Utah set a target for reducing greenhouse gas emissions to 2005 levels by the year 2020, and whereas the vast majority of energy used for transportation comes from foreign oil, making it imperative that we reduce our dependence on oil while still meeting our transportation needs, and whereas the main decisions consumers make, their choice of vehicle will have a significant impact on the environment and air quality, and whereas the state has declared a compressed natural gas I-15 corridor from as far south as St. George up to the Idaho border, and whereas education about alternative fuel vehicles can raise consumer awareness, influence consumer choice, and encourage further development of transportation choices, and whereas the Alternative Fuel Vehicle Awareness Month kickoff begins with the American Automobile Association's Greenlight and Utah Clean City Stakeholder Showcase of alternative fuel vehicles at the St. George and Salt Lake City AAA offices, now therefore the Mayor and City Council of West Valley City do hereby proclaim November as Alternative Fuel Vehicle Awareness Month in West Valley City. And we're pleased that our garbage fleet is an alternative fuel, CNG, and more of our city fleet is as well, and so it's something where we're putting our money where our mouth is on that one. We have another proclamation this evening declaring November as Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month in the city, and council member Don Christensen will read that on our behalf tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas in 2012, an estimated 43,920 people will be diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in the United States, and 37,390 will die from the disease, And whereas pancreatic cancer is one of the deadliest cancers, the fourth leading cause of cancer death in the United States, and is the only major cancer with a 5-year relative survival rate in the single digits at just 6%. And whereas when symptoms of pancreatic cancer present themselves, it is usually too late for an optimistic prognosis, and 74% of pancreatic cancer patients die within the first year of their diagnosis, while 94% of pancreatic cancer patients die within the first 5 years. And whereas of all the racial ethnic groups in the United States, African Americans have the highest incidence rate of pancreatic cancer, between 34% and 70% higher than the other groups. And whereas approximately 210 deaths will occur in Utah in 2012, and whereas there is no cure for pancreatic cancer and there have been no significant improvements in survival rates in the last 40 years, and whereas the federal government invests significantly less money in pancreatic cancer research than it does in any of the other leading cancer killers, and pancreatic cancer research constitutes only approximately 2% of the National Cancer Institute's federal research funding, a figure far too low given the severity of the disease, its mortality rate, and how little is known about how to arrest it. And whereas the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network is the first and only national patient advocacy organization that serves the pancreatic cancer community in West Valley and nationwide by focusing its efforts on public policy, research funding, patient services, and public awareness and education related to developing effective treatments and a cure for pancreatic cancer. And whereas the good and well-being of the residents of West Valley are enhanced as a direct result of increased awareness about pancreatic cancer and research into early detection, causes, and effective treatments, now therefore be it resolved that West Valley City will encourage and call upon the Utah federal delegation to pass the Pancreatic Cancer Research and Education Act, and be it further resolved that the Mayor and City Council of West Valley City, Utah, do hereby designate the month of November 2012 as Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month in West Valley City.
Great, thank you, Councilman. We come to item 7 tonight, which is our comment period. And we have one person who signed up to speak to us tonight, Mike Markham. There he is. And Mike, you've been here before, so
I know the drill.
so you know the drill. Come on up.
I kind of want to talk about community standards. There's been a lot of talk about community standards with developers in the area. I remember sitting in on a meeting a while back with Highbury when there was some discussion about you guys were trying to tell them what kind of doors should go on their pavilion within Highbury, whether it should be garage doors or it should be an enclosed pavilion that people could use for a community center. I've been in on meetings when you talk about these builders that's going to build to the community standards as far as their countertops and so forth in their apartment complexes. I know we've talked about this. It was brought up again a couple of weeks ago when I was here at Community Standards on our development. My question is we get on these developers that want to come in and build apartments and so forth in our community. We get on them about their community standards. But what about the community standards that you guys need to put across to the property owners down here on 3650 South? You spent a lot of money to tear down the Problem Street. It's just down the road from Harvey Street. Now we're letting this other piece of property sit down there. We've got double standards going on. Where's our community standards? You know, I'm back up at the cancer center every day. I drive past a piece of property on 3900 South on about 6th East. I told you early in the spring they went in, they put planter boxes in so people could grow gardens. They've gone back, they've refinished the nice wrought iron fence that's on 3900 South. Nice pavilion, nice maintained parking lot. Don't know who uses the parking lot because it's all locked up. But there are people in there that's planting. There's dumpsters in there to clean up the gardens. Why can't we get something down here? Why do we have to sit back and put up with that? Why do you guys put up with that? Why don't you stand up? I know there's one of you out there that probably doesn't care about the community standard. because I've been past everybody's houses. When are we going to stand up? I'd pick on any organization that I see. I was going to go buy tires last spring, went to pull into Thomas Tire because they're a local company. Their front yard was full of dandelions. I drove out. I'm not going to support a business that doesn't support West Valley City. I don't think we should renew a business license for a business that doesn't maintain their property. We got to get tough. You guys want to build this area around here? You want to build a city? Let's build a city. Let's get tough. You know, I've heard different things on my little conflict on the variances for the basements when I got upset, which I apologized. And the comment was made, well, we can't tell people what to do with their private properties. What about guys like me that care about West Valley City? I live in West Valley City. I don't have a beautiful yard. I have a maintained yard. I spend money every year to update my yard. Let's get some standards going here. We want people to come in here. Let's maintain it. I mean, why can't you guys speak up to this organization? Say, hey, come on, treat us fair. You know, find somebody that we can roll that property to. It's not on the tax rolls. Find another nonprofit organization that can do something with it. Put a boys club in there, boys and girls club in there. By the high school, there's junior highs around. Utilize the property for something that might be mowed, maintained, taken care of. The rent fence that's down there is now just a big billboard for signs for people running for office.
30 seconds, sir.
You got it. Thanks.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Markham. That's the only person we had signed up for from the public to comment today. Mr. City Manager, any comments you have today, maybe in relation to that or other items?
Sure, Mayor. I'll make a comment just in reply to Mr. Markham's comments there. So, first off, we appreciate his residency, his citizenship, and his care and concern for the community and the neighborhoods. He's been here many times before, as we know, and just as often as not, I think he's complimenting you as a council and we as a city as our efforts, as he is calling us to action in problems that we have. So we appreciate that. The other comment I would make is just that there are always more needs in terms of action that we should take in property maintenance, in businesses, neighborhoods, all those sorts of things. We were talking earlier this evening in the study meeting about another way in which we are approaching that very question. I would just say that we have over, now I'm a little shy on the numbers right now. I know we've got around 40,000 individual residential households. That doesn't equate to the same number of addresses, or it may, but not yards, because that includes multiple family units. We also have more addresses, both developed and undeveloped businesses and other commercial ventures. And all I can say is we are making great strides. We are doing very many things positive from a positive sense in terms of both developing, redeveloping, and requiring maintenance in those properties. And we will continue to do so. We're always looking for better ways to do that. And so we appreciate the concern and the frankly, the involvement from the citizenry. I'd much rather have a resident or a citizen in saying, hey, they're worried about that, as opposed to those that would look across the street, for example, and just say, I don't care. So once again, from that standpoint, I appreciate Mr. Markham's comments, but I just also wanted to make the comment and assure both the council and the public in general that we are doing many and above and beyond, I believe, the call in terms of all those other areas that I spoke about earlier. New development, redevelopment, maintenance of existing development. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pyle. In our comment period, is there any member of the council that has anything to comment on this or any other topic? Councilmember Vince?
I'd like to comment on this piece of property, which is owned by the LDS Church. I think I've often wondered why we can't get them to take care of that piece of property, and what's our contact, and at what level? Or is that a locally owned piece of property by the local stake, or is that something and that they're responsible to maintain, or is this something that the properties of the church would be more involved with? And I don't know if we know those answers, but I think if we find those answers out, then we at least know who we need to be talking to.
Great questions, and just a couple of responses or thoughts on the. I'll keep that short. One, I think they are maintaining it, as even Mr. Markham pointed out. They got dumpsters there, they got their fence up, they cut the weeds from time to time. The point isn't that they don't maintain it; it's that they don't develop it or make it nice or make it pleasing, do something with it, and that towards that end, absolutely, we've had conversations ongoing with the LDS Church. What are you doing with the property? What can you do? They have told us that we could buy the property from them at a market rate. They've even given us a price that we could respond to. Frankly, I don't believe that unless the council, it's not on our plan, for example, right now to do that, to build any park or any other development there. So I don't feel like that's a wise course for us to pursue right now. But other than that, a willingness to sell it to us, they really haven't shown any interest to do anything further with it.
Yeah, thank you. Any other council member that would like to comment? Councilmember Christensen?
I'd just like to publicly congratulate Harmon's, one of our local companies that are headquartered here in West Valley. They received the Common Good Award from Envision Utah for outstanding commitment to valuing customers and the community this last week, and would like to congratulate them on receiving that award.
Great performance. Yes.
No, go ahead.
I go last.
No, go ahead.
Any other council members that'd like to comment on anything? From the mailbag, received a letter this week from our friends in Taiwan. This is from Chao Ching Li, the Nantou County Magistrate, who said, "Dear Mayor Mike Winder, thanks for inviting us to visit your city in September. Although it was a short trip, we really had a great time. It was a nice experience for us. I want to express my appreciation and gratitude about what you and your staff did. I also want to thanks for your hospitality that you put aside your busy schedule to arrange all the activities to welcome us. It's my pleasure to share and exchange the ideas about our culture and art. Thanks for your team's help that makes the West Valley City as our home. I'm grateful for all your help and support. A special thanks to Don Christensen, Ross Olson, and Terrence Chen, who arranged the schedule very well. I deeply appreciate your time and kindness. We gained many valuable experiences from this visit. Hopefully in the near future we will have more chances of doing cultural exchanges and cooperation. Genuinely, I wish your city is prosperous and all the best to your people. Yours sincerely." So I thought that was a nice letter worth sharing, and again, congratulations to Don and the staff and the Sister City Committee for a successful event there that involved literally hundreds of residents of our community, which was a big success.
And here, Mayor, was where I was going to say, if
Okay.
there's no objections, looks like we had a scout trickle in, and a dutiful scout.
I was just going to pick on him.
Okay.
Great minds think alike. Sir, we'd like to acknowledge the scouts that come visit us. Would you mind coming up to the microphone and telling us your name and troop number, where you go to school, and what badge you're working on tonight?
This is 2 weeks in a row. For the same boy.
Or 2 times in a row, because we
Yeah.
meet last week. You know the drill.
My name's Joseph, and my troop number is 1644, and I'm homeschooled. I'm working on the communications merit badge.
Great.
And they live in the Diamond Summit subdivision, so.
Great. Well, thank you, and know that even though you're that corner of the city, you're not forgotten about. We really appreciate you coming to City Hall. So thank you so much. We go to item 8 now, which is our resolutions, of which we have 2 tonight. Mr. Pyle, please introduce the first one.
Thank you, sir. This resolution would authorize an appropriation from the unclaimed cash account to the administrative account of the police department. This would be in the amount of $15,710 and is found or unclaimed property. These funds, as they are authorized by the council, and that's a requirement before any of those funds are used, are usually used for the purpose of purchase of equipment, so hard type items for the police department.
Okay, thank you. Council, any questions there? Or a motion?
A motion to approve Resolution 12-151.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that item? Okay, all in favor of approval say aye.
Aye.
That passes unanimously. Mr. Pyle, 12-152, please.
Thank you, sir. We have a deed restriction transfer that we would like to have approval on from the council. We had a property that was purchased using home funds, and in 2000, well, we bought that in 2004, and then we demolished it in 2008. This was on South Market Street, right here next to City Hall. We can do that, but in the case of purchasing properties with federal funds, you then need to, especially or particularly housing and urban development funds or home funds in the particular program here, you then need to maintain that housing stock in another location. So we have to transfer that deed restriction to another one. The property we're proposing to do that with is 4478 South Haywarden Drive, a property that the city has owned for a number of years.
Okay, thank you. Council, what's your pleasure on this one?
I would move for approval of Resolution 12-152.
Second.
Okay, thank you both. Any discussion of that motion? Okay, all in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
That also passes unanimously. We have a couple items of new business tonight. Mr. Pyle, please introduce the first one.
Thank you, sir. We have a final plat approval for a subdivision that has appeared before the council before. This is the 3-lot Bolton Farm subdivision, 2.2 acres on 36 West and 4460 South.
Okay, thank you. Council, what's your pleasure on this one? Any comments or questions for the staff or a motion?
Mayor, I move for approval of application S15 2012.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? I will point out to any visitors that we do have a study meeting each week at 4:30, so we review all the items of the next week's agenda. And so if we move rather quickly today, it's not because we're hungry, it's because we actually have had at least a week, in this past case, a couple weeks, to chew on these and dig through the plans. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
That also passes. We have next on the agenda to hear and consider an appeal from the Salt Lake Tribune. Mr. Powell, would you like to introduce this one, please?
Thanks, sir. So this is a appeal filed by Mr. Cimarron Neugebauer, who I believe is in the audience there, from the Tribune regarding denial of a waiver of fees for a records request. So we will be proceeding with that appeal. And if I remember correctly, for procedurally how we have run this in the past, actually, you know what, I'm just going to refer back to Eric. It seems like we let the appellant make their case and presentation first, and then we'll be represented by Brandon, who's one of our city attorneys representing the city's position.
Yes, sir, that's correct. And just to add to that, under our ordinances, I'll just read it. At the hearing, the city council shall allow the parties to testify, present evidence, and comment on the issues. The city council may allow other interested persons to comment on issues.
Okay. Okay, with that, I'd invite Mr. Neugebauer to come to the podium. And I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. I always think I'm getting it right, and I may not be, but
I guess I just need to come to these hearings more often. It's Noy as in toy. Everything else you had right, Neugebauer. So, first of all, I just wanted to thank the council for making the time to meet with me here and giving me an opportunity to come before the council. I know your time is precious, and you got a lot of things on your plate and to deal with, and so I'll make this short. I know the information that I had written up and presented to the council has been submitted to everyone, so I'm not going to belabor the points that I had put in there. The one thing I wanted to bring up is just touch on a few points, and Mayor Winder, I wanted to note the letter that you read about Nanto, just recently recognizing how impressed they were with West Valley City and by the project, and I think a lot of people in the community felt that this was a good project for the city of West Valley, and I think the sister city coming in also felt this was a good project for the sharing the diversity between the different cities. However, there is a reason for my request, and that is because this has become somewhat of a divisive issue that has led to some distrust between the Chinese community and donors specifically in the project, and because of that, I had issued a request for the city council and mayor's emails related to discussing the Chinese Heritage Gate Foundation in the West Valley Sister City community. The main reason for this request is, frankly, there's a lot of speculation brewing, and since this has come out, I feel that it needs to be put to rest with accurate facts, and those accurate facts, I believe, will be detailed in those emails and help the public better understand, as this has been a public issue from the beginning. These donations have been made through public funds, through individual donors, and has come to light in the news over the past decade, raising money. It's become a big issue between international relations, as well as recently became a more notable topic as the even though the gate has now been erected and everything is set up, there is, however, still investigation ongoing into Mr. Terrence Chen through the Division of Occupational and Professional Licensing, and still active. I just checked today with the District Attorney's Office in Salt Lake County. That investigation into to his dealings with, as he was chair over those funds. And this is something that I come to the board with because, or the city council with, because it's been a concern of donors that have called me and let me know. And I believe that continuing to bring this information to the public is of the public interest. And when it comes to the cost breakdown of this, the reason I stated that I see this as an excessive cost for a $150 fee for a copy of these emails is one, I have never been given, even though I've asked in previous emails. You'll see I don't have an idea of how many emails we're talking about here. Also, within the Government Records Access and Management Law, it states that the first 15 minutes of that process should not be charged. When I've noted the breakdown from the city recorder, I noticed that was not put in there, as well as the mention of the deputy city recorder elected to manually look over some of the printed documents that the IT department pulled back, and this is fine, and she has every right to decide to do that, to decide basically whether they were in the scope of the records request according to the city manager's October 8th denial. However, I believe that nearly the $150 that we're talking about here for emails is excessive and unreasonable, and in violation of Grandma statute that states a governmental entity may not charge a fee for reviewing a record to determine whether it is subject to disclosure. I see this as unnecessary. It's definitely a subjective step, in my opinion, for which no fee should be charged at all in the first place, determining charging for a city member to decide whether or not this is something to be released to the public in these public emails. Also, I also wanted to mention in a previous case late last year, the Salt Lake Tribune, one of our reporters had requested email records related to an English initiative program. I was here for one of those city council meetings, a great program that West Valley had brought together. This was a wonderful program that a lot of people wanted to know about and have more transparency about why the city was doing this. And West Valley City graciously provided the emails that were related to this at no cost to the Salt Lake Tribune. These emails also contained keywords in them that had the words English in them, even though they were necessary to provide to the reporter. And so there wasn't that same filtering out that happened with the recorder in this one, apparently. My point in this is, I believe this is also in the best interest of the council to release these emails and not have a fee charged, as it is in the public interest, for that exact same reason. This is a good project, this is a noble project that the city went out to do, and they spent the past decade working on, and unfortunately there was a lot of speculation and allegations that came up, and those need to be cleared up. And we'd like to clear them up as the record for the public by reading through those emails and letting people know and deciding for themselves what those emails do contain, and let people know essentially this Heritage Gate will remain with a good reputation, and we can restore some of the questions that people have right now as kind of a questionable black eye hovering over the project as some of this litigation continues. I also wanted to say the release of these emails is also showing to the community that this is nothing to hide from the council, and it will help restore the confidence in the Heritage Gate and the workings of the City Council and the community. And my final point here is I just wanted to make that I would ask for a full waiver under Grandma Law. This statute it fulfills a request without charge when it determines releasing a record that primarily benefits the public. I would cite that statute to the council to make them aware that, to reiterate, as I mentioned before, this is of the public interest. This is something that I've been getting numerous phone calls over since the stories have ran to understand what's going on here and kind of what Mr. Chen's part was in this. And part of my request for these emails is to get some of that detail in Mr. Chen's dealings with the city, and not just particularly the city. So I hope you'll understand and appreciate that. This is specifically to look into some of those allegations that have been brought up and continue to be litigated in a public forum. With these points, I leave with you, and I thank you again for your time, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk to the council. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's see, Mr. Pyle.
Sorry, Mayor. Yeah, let me invite Mr. Hill to the stand.
Thank you, Mr. Pyle, and Mr. Mayor and council members. It's a privilege to be here in front of you tonight to speak in defense of our city manager's decision to uphold the $149.67 fee that was charged to Mr. Neugebauer. Tonight we're here to talk about balancing two important principles. On the one hand, we have the important principle of the media's free access to public records. On the other hand, we have the important right of the taxpayer to efficient government at the lowest cost possible. What the Grandma Law is really all about is balancing these two principles, which sometimes can compete. And I think what we'll learn tonight is that our city manager's decision balanced those principles perfectly. Before we go too deeply into the details of exactly why this fee is reasonable, let's just briefly talk about the facts behind the request. On September 5th of this year, Mr. Neugebauer submitted a grandma request requesting two categories of records. First, Mr. Neugebauer requested copies of all check receipts to West Valley City from donors for the Chinese Heritage Gate Foundation. Second, Mr. Neugebauer requested all city council and mayor emails related to or discussing the Chinese Heritage Gate Foundation and the West Valley Sister City Committee. Mr. Neugebauer requested a waiver of fees at that time. On September 6th, the city provided Mr. Neugebauer with copies of 7 check receipts which were easily accessible in the finance office. These records were provided at no cost. However, it took 6 1/4 hours of city staff time to compile all the emails that Mr. Neugebauer requested. Mr. Neugebauer was billed for 3 hours of our network administrator's time, Mr. Tyson Emmett, and 3 hours of our deputy city recorder's time, Ms. Carol Hicks, which amounted to $149.67 in fees. On October 3rd, Mr. Neugebauer appealed the fee to our city manager, who denied that appeal on October 8th. Tonight we're here because Mr. Neugebauer has appealed the city manager's determination. With those facts in mind, I'd like to briefly explain the process and how we spent this time as a city in fulfilling Mr. Neugebauer's request. The process begins with our network administrator, who searches the emails, which are kept in an off-site server. And so Mr. Emmett, our network administrator, searches these emails, and there are dozens of filters that he has to apply. For example, he has to include all emails that are sent to, received by, copied to, or blind copied to all members of the council and the mayor. So that's a substantial number of filters that he has to program into his query. On top of that, you have the content filters, which include the Chinese Heritage Gate Foundation, the Sister City Committee, etc. But you can't simply just use those terms in order to get a full picture of the records that the city retains. For example, we wouldn't necessarily always say the Chinese Heritage Gate Committee. We would say the Chinese Gate Committee, or discuss things related to the Chinese Gate, and so forth. So these also had to be included. Mr. Neugebauer suggests in his appeal letter that this is just a mouse click that would take seconds to bring up these emails. As Mr. Emmett could testify, that's sadly not true. What has to happen is that Mr. Emmett has to program a detailed query that filters out all of these, all irrelevant emails, and tries to get down to the root and show all the records that the city has. The process, however, doesn't end there. In order to define the query broadly enough so that you can make sure you capture all responsive records, sometimes you're going to get unresponsive emails. In this case, Mr. Emmett's query, which we know got all the relevant emails, returned 851 email messages. We had to sort through these because, for example, some of the emails may not be within the scope of the request. We don't want to just provide materials that aren't responsive to that request. Ms. Hicks then sorted through the emails simply for responsiveness to the request. Were they responsive or were they not? Not an inquiry into whether they were protected, not an inquiry to whether they were private records, simply whether they were included in the request. Ultimately, we found that 153 emails were within the scope of the grandma request and could be released. This took Ms. Hicks, as you might expect, 3 additional hours, because looking through 800 emails to determine responsiveness was not an easy task. This is a reasonable process that enables us to quickly respond to grandma requests and to give the full picture and provide all records that are responsive. In this case, the city balanced the 2 competing obligations that we talked about. First, the media's right to access public records, and second, the taxpayer's right to efficient and low-cost government. In this case, records requests that take such great effort and take so much time impose a significant burden on the public and on taxpayers by creating an additional cost of government. The grandma statute permits us to charge these fees for precisely this reason, because it balances the public's right to know against the burden that's imposed on the taxpayer by such large records requests. As you can see, the 6.25 hours spent by city staff here were reasonable and necessary in order to take care of the records request and provide all responsive materials. Before I close, I'd just like to address a few of the points that Mr. Neugebauer raised in his appeal letter. Initially, Mr. Neugebauer observes that we didn't provide a breakdown of incremental costs with regard to the costs of electronic output and formatting and such in the request. That's true because we didn't charge him any fees like that. We didn't charge him for computer time or a share of a software license. We charged only for staff time, and that's outside of that provision in grandma. Second, Mr. Neugebauer objects, claiming that we charged an impermissible charge for reviewing documents to determine if they're subject to disclosure. In this case, that's simply not what happened. What happened is that Ms. Hicks reviewed the emails for responsiveness to his request. The analogy I would draw is, for example, in our finance office, we have thousands and thousands of receipts, canceled checks, etc. If someone requests a specific subset of those checks, we go in and eliminate the checks that don't pertain to the request. Sorting through these emails is the electronic version of doing precisely the same thing. We program a query that will return all of the relevant emails, but there will also be some irrelevant content there. Our duty under grandma is to respond precisely to the request and to provide all records that are within the scope of that, which is why Ms. Hicks sorted for responsiveness to the request. Finally, as Mr. Neugebauer observes, the city cannot charge for the first quarter hour of staff time. In this case, we did not. We provided the breakdown to Mr. Neugebauer of 3 hours of Mr. Emmett's time and 3 hours of Ms. Hicks' time because that was all that we could charge. In reality, Mr. Emmett spent 3 1/4 hours. Therefore, we did not charge for that first quarter hour of staff time. With all of those points in mind, I just want to encourage you to affirm the decision of the city manager that the fee imposed was reasonable and was a direct reflection of the costs associated with this request. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pyle, anything else that?
For purpose of the proceeding, Mayor, the only other steps that we've taken in these normally is to ask the appellant if they had any other comments they wanted to make, which I would invite Mr. Neubauer to do at this point, and then give a similar opportunity to our attorney representing us as well, if he should so desire.
Okay, any desire to say anything additional?
Sure, Council, I just wanted to reiterate the mention as before the charge for the first quarter hour of staff time. It was never previously stated when in the previous letters about how much time it took. It never was stated that it took 3¼ hours, but that first quarter hour was not included. As well as, I believe this is in the best interest of the city to release these documents and at a lower cost that they originally had put forward. And I just also want to reiterate that I'll take the 851 emails, I'll sift through them. That's burden, that onus is on me. I can do that. I never asked Ms. Hicks. It's great that she did that. That's nice of her, but I can take the 851, which originally came up, and I'll sift them down to the 153. That's fine. I just want to point that back into how Grandma Law states that a government entity should not charge for that reviewing a record to determine whether it's subject to disclosure. And as I mentioned previously in a similar request, the Tribune had email records on the English Initiative, and they got back a ton of emails where the word English was used. Had nothing to do with the English Initiative program. So obviously this doesn't happen in every single case, but I would ask you to consider that Grandma statute and realize that this is not something that I asked them to do, something they chose to do. I would gladly take the 851 emails and sit through it on my own. So thank you.
Thank you. Any final comments?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Council, any questions you have or comments?
I have a question or two for Mr. Neubauer. Just a comment first, Mr. Neubauer. When I bill my clients, I never send them a statement of things I'm not charging them for. Now, when the first time you were up, you mentioned that, I believe you stated that you shouldn't have to pay any money at all for these documents. And the second time you took the podium, I believe you said it should be at a lower cost. I'd like, if I could, a clear understanding of your position tonight.
I am requesting a full waiver of those costs. If that's not possible, I would be willing to negotiate a reduction in the cost.
Oh, and as much as I understand your argument, these records are so important to shed light on this very important issue to the community, and it's in the public's best interest to have these records revealed and get to the bottom of this tremendous problem that is stirring around in this pot. How much would you pay?
It depends on what the council's willing to
Well, you
move
wouldn't pay
forward.
$150. How much would you pay?
Not $150. I'm looking
40?
I'm looking down more in the range of about 25.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions by the council for Mr. Neubauer while he's up here?
Just more of a comment than a question. The records have never been denied your access. They're available to you. The city's provided, they're there, they're ready for you to have. So this isn't about access, this is about cost.
Correct.
And so...
But sometimes access is inhibited by cost.
Okay, I just wanted to make it clear that the city has never denied you access to the records.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions by the council for Mr. Neubauer?
I have a question for Mr. Hill.
Okay, we'll let you sit down, Mr. Hill. If you could come back up, please.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hill, under the Grandma statutes and our ordinances, is there any way that we can bill the Salt Lake Tribune for your time? or for our time, for the city manager's time and responding to the appeal, for staff that we've got here, for everybody else that has considered this request?
Sadly, sir, I'm afraid there isn't.
Sounds to me like he's getting a deal.
I would agree.
Any other questions for Mr. Hill? Or rhetorical questions, as the case may be.
That was a serious question. Let's add it up.
Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Have a seat. Council, any other comments on this? The way I'm looking at ordinance 3-16-407 on fees. This was an attachment in our packet. It says the city may charge a reasonable fee to cover its actual cost of duplicating a record, compiling a record in a form other than that maintained by the city, postage and any other fee reasonably related to the request for the record consistent with this chapter. And I think Mr. Hill has laid out that that is indeed the case. We do have a right to charge a reasonable fee, and the fee we've charged is reasonable. But it also says, number 2, the city may fulfill a record request without charge when it determines that A, releasing the record primarily benefits the public rather than a person, B, if the individual's requesting the record is the subject of it, or C, the requester's rights are directly implicated. To me, I do agree with Mr. Neubauer that this was a topic that was of enough interest in the broad community that releasing the record does primarily benefit the public rather than a person. So for me, the question here tonight isn't necessarily, do we have the right to charge what we've charged, the $150? I think that was proven pretty conclusively, and we do have that right. The question to me is, should we charge that $149 and change? Because we do, according to the ordinance, we may release the record without charge if we feel that the record primarily benefits the public. In my opinion, we too often look for ways to say no to the media, and not often enough times do we look for ways to say yes. Unfortunately, we have to keep things behind the wall of grandma in certain sensitive times. On ginormous grandma requests, we have to charge appropriate fees. When it comes down to something that we're talking $149 for a story that truly is, in my opinion, benefiting the public rather than an individual. Simran's not doing this for his own kicks and giggles. It's clearly for the public interest. Then I think we have an opportunity from time to time to waive that fee. And so I would encourage my colleagues tonight to waive the $149 and change fee out of the spirit that this article and the articles coming out of this and still come out of this were to primarily benefit the public. And of course, that is our right to do.
I would like to make a point that the argument made tonight that because sometimes records are released without a fee, all records should be released without a fee, plays the other way. That we should charge a fee every time that we make a photocopy or send a person that the taxpayers are paying to comply with requests made by the public or the media or others. Certainly the Salt Lake Tribune is a for-profit entity, probably has $150 rattling around somewhere to pay for the information to write this story. Certainly they're paying Mr. Neubauer a salary to write this story that's a vital public interest, as I am told. We as a city hire people and pay them salaries to do a job, and when they're asked to do something extra, we have the opportunity under grandma, and I believe the obligation as elected officials to see that they're compensated for that additional work.
Okay. Any other comments on this or a motion?
Mayor, I'd like to make a comment if the council is not, doesn't have any further.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. So basically, I just wanted to reiterate my reasoning for the decision I made in the first place here in this particular request and some of the context that goes to that. First off, as you both mentioned and Steve did, or Councilman Bueller did, we quite often get requests for information from the media, not just the Tribune, many sources, and quite often we give that information to them without charge or without extra cost to them. In fact, in this very case, we did that, as was pointed out by Mr. Hill. In fact, I had a conversation with Mr. Neugebauer specific to that as he was submitting the grandma request. So he was fully warned beforehand as to what he could expect in terms of time and effort and involvement that it was going to take for us to produce this grandma request. I offered to him in that conversation that we had prior to the fulfillment of the request, the records that were provided to him for free. He requested them. I said, yeah, sure, absolutely, we'll do that. We'll provide those records for you. But understand and know that these other records are going to take us time and effort to produce, which they did. Second, I just wanted to kind of point out the reason in my mind why I rejected the appeal in the first place, which also has to do with the public interest. In my estimation, as I made that decision, the public interest was best served by certainly providing the records, which we do and have available. Certainly we are interested in obeying the statute and also the principle behind it, which is transparency. We also are trying to balance behind that those specific requests which take time from a staff resource standpoint at a significant burden level. If it's an insignificant burden level, then absolutely we provide those records free often. In this particular case, I didn't think that was appropriate. As I mentioned before, I'd even given the entity in question a heads up that, hey, this is going to take us some time and some effort to produce that. I didn't give him a cost at that time or what we would charge it, but he certainly was aware that the effort was going to be there. And then last, I just also wanted to address the point that Councilman Bueller did, which is, yeah, don't beat us over the head with the hammer that we provide you pre-records and then use it against it, use that against us in some sort of appeal for records. I guess from a consistency standpoint, what we ought to do is deny them those records or access to those records every time, just like Councilman Bueller said. I don't want to be in a position of doing that. I want to be cooperative with the media, but don't beat us up for doing it too. That's it, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
Just a comment that Mr. Pyle mentioned that the initial documents were given to him for no cost, and so I think that shows some good faith on that part.
Okay. If there aren't any other comments, then we'll also entertain a motion at this time.
I move for denial of the appeal.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion of that motion? Okay, Ms. McKendrick, let's do a roll call vote on this one.
Mr. Vincent?
Yes.
Mr. Bueller?
Aye.
Mr. Hume?
Aye.
Mr. Rushton?
Still thinking?
Yeah. Not as fast as the rest of you, but I think I would like to have some more time on this, and so for the meantime, I'll vote no.
Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Mayor Linder?
No.
Majority?
The majority, the ayes have it, and the appeal from the city manager has been denied, and the city manager's decision stands. So thank you for coming tonight and taking the time. We come to item 10 this evening, Mr. Pyle, which is a motion for executive session. Any need for that tonight that you're aware of?
No, sir, thanks.
Council? Okay, when we come to item 11, which is to adjourn the regular meeting. And just a heads up to those visiting, we do have short meetings immediately following this with the other boards that we convene.
I'd like to call to order the RDA regular meeting. We've had an opening ceremony and a roll call. We have 3 sets of minutes to approve, October 2nd, October 16th, and October 23rd. Members of the board?
I'll move for approval of the minutes of October 2nd, October 16th, and October 23rd, 2012.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of accepting those minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. Any communications?
No, sir,
Any report?
and not tonight.
Then we move to item 7 and we'll adjourn.
Yeah, I'll call to order the regular meeting of the West Valley Housing Authority. Note all members are present, minus Board Member Lang. We have approval of the October 2nd regular meeting minutes for your consideration.
Move for approval of October 2nd regular meeting.
Second.
Yeah, all in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any communication or report of the executive director tonight?
No, sir, thanks.
Okay, and seeing no other business, this body will stand adjourned.